Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. On today's episode of me talking about stuff and things, I will be going over episode 8 of Last One Standing, the survival competition series in which 14 survivalists battle it out to win the title of Last One Standing and $100,000. Should be more, but we'll see if that number will increase next season, the season after, the season after, the season after, or the season after. Before I continue, link below are some surveys. There's the Last One Standing survey, which only includes survivalists that have not been on Last One Standing. And then the Largados y Pelados survey for the 30 participants who you potentially would want to see on an XL because, I believe the first season of XL happened after 4 seasons of the initial series, so why not have the spin-offs have their own XLs? I think it would be interesting. Maybe there could be a Naked and Afraid XL versus the world, where the majority of the survivalists are from one country, but then you bring in survivalists from other countries. There could be a US versus the world, Canada versus the world, Brazil versus the world, Latin America versus the world, Australia versus the world. I'm sure those Australian survivalists would do so amazing together, and it would be great to hear them talk. They'd probably say the C word a lot too, but that is neither here nor there. Now, moving on to the episode. So after the nighttime elimination, the survivalists go complete their journey to Zone 3 and hunker down. They are all in the same boma, all 7 in the same boma. They compete as individuals, but will be together in a group. And the groups kind of split off into Dan, Kai, Patrick, and Dani, and on one side with their fire, and Jeff, Gary, and Fernando on the other. Jeff and Gary kind of have their little duo going on where they're probably willing to trade with one another. And then Kai, Patrick, and Dan form their own alliance. So Dani and Fernando are kind of on their own a little bit. We get Fernando talking about him seeing himself more as a family man as opposed to a survivalist. So he's doubting himself a little bit in the competition. Dani is struggling because she's worried about being able to find protein in the environment she's in, and she has to go out and forage a lot longer than everyone else because she's a vegetarian and is unwilling to compromise her beliefs to try to stay a little bit longer, because it would stink if you compromise your values and then you get eliminated a week or two later. So after that, the next day, everyone gets maps, and there are 2 survival assets hidden amongst a termite mound, and then off in the distance, there's some paracord, and there is a shovel, and Patrick is able to find a paracord amongst termite mounds, and Fernando finds a shovel where the handle was sticking up out of the ground, and it was a little funny because Dan thought he found it in a warthog hole, but literally a few feet away is the handle sticking up out of the ground, and you can see the camera just turn slightly, and then there it is. And Jeff's kind of standing back waiting for Dan to find it, so it's kind of funny but kind of not. But Fernando finds the shovel, which is important for the next reward challenge, but we won't get into that until the next episode. And there's also a moment where when Jeff is going by the termite mounds where the paracord is hidden, he disturbs the termite mounds to make it seem like, oh, maybe someone else found it, so give up your chase. Kind of similar to what he did last season, where he, quote unquote, found the fishing asset by wrapping a piece of wood in a burlap sack. It didn't work, but, it's entertaining to see these strategies come to life. These strategies are valid, but some people try to diminish other strategies. But, moving on with the episode, everything is found, and we unfortunately see Dani kind of feeling the strain of lack of nutrients, and her body is sort of unable to function. And on day 32, it kind of comes to a head where she's saying she's really cold, she's feeling pain around her kidneys, and everyone was talking about how warm it is outside, so it's very worrying that Dani is so cold in this environment. And everyone goes out to do their own thing except for Dan, who stays by her and makes sure she's okay, makes sure she's drinking water. And a medic is called, and the head medic comes in and says that Dani unfortunately has to be tapped for the challenge because her body is kind of shutting down and they need to, make sure she, no further damage is done. And she unfortunately leaves because it's been 2 weeks since she's had protein. So it's really sad to see her go. She fought incredibly hard. She's a very talented survivalist. And Dan was genuinely upset that she had to leave too, and was talking about how she managed to go 32 days in a harsh environment and having so little resources to eat, but still fighting and proving herself. So it's very unfortunate. And even at that time, if she had had some protein or some stew or whatnot, it probably would be too late to help her bounce back. So she needed medical attention to be treated outside of the competition environment. And while Dani and Dan were chatting before Dani was tapped, Dan asked her, hey, do you want any messages to be passed on, or what would you like to happen with your items? And we hear Dani say you can have them. And there's been some controversy online because Jeff kind of doubted the validity of the statement. Gary kind of doubted the validity of the statement because Gary was saying how he did so much for Dani, so he thinks that he should be getting the items. And so we don't see her saying anything other than you can have them. Online, she's saying that Gary and Fernando were supposed to have the items and Dan had the kudu skull, but I don't know if stuff was cut out or if Dani wasn't able to get her point across clearly because she was in such a low moment without the nutrients. But I believe Dan ended up just keeping the hide and then giving all the other stuff to everyone else. And that comes into play later because Gary said he wanted the hide and would give Dan the knife, but Dan was saying how he wanted the hide and Gary could have the knife, and Gary was like, that's fine. And then we also see a lot of the survivalists go out hunting throughout the episode, and Dan gets the first food win of the zone by getting a bunch of frogs for everybody and shares it. Patrick gets some catfish and shares it. And Gary, while hunting successfully, gets an impala and shares it amongst the group and talks about how I share what I get. Patrick was selfish with his Nyala that one time. And so that's very interesting. I wonder if the rivalry will continue. We shall see. Everyone against everyone. But some people are more kumbaya than others. But maybe it's some people's perception, but we don't know. Because what you see isn't always the truth. It's reality TV. Not everything everyone says is completely factual. And we shouldn't take it as such. But, the food is shared and there's a massive storm. And Gary tries to use his only hide to protect his impala meat, and so he's basically sleeping by the fire during a storm without a hide, and so that's not great for him. And then Gary also becomes sick because he ate bad Nyala meat, and this is the second time unfortunately this has happened to Gary, so hopefully he'll bounce back, but we shall see. And on day 34, the survivalists are told on the next day they will be moving on to zone 4, and they must also have something to help them dig. So everyone goes out to get stuff to dig with except for Fernando because he has the Pulaski and the shovel, and Jeff comes out immediately and is like, I'll give you half my meat and half the salt block for the Pulaski or shovel. And so Fernando decides to do the trade for the Pulaski, and I don't blame Fernando because Fernando has had a tough time getting food, so at least he has some Nyala to eat, and Fernando has the shovel. And then the next day everyone moves on to the next zone. Gary isn't really feeling too well because, he ate some bad meat and his digestive system was like, get it out! And because, the survivalists are in their bomas, he couldn't really leave. So that's just unfortunate for everyone involved. And so they move on to zone 4, where they are told that they are going to have to boil water without a pot. So they'll probably have to dig a hole, put something in the hole to hold water or have a fire there. And so it'll be interesting to see who's going to win this challenge. And kind of spoilers, but the summary for the next episode says that the winner of the challenge gets to take all the items from the loser of the challenge. So even if you don't win, it's probably a good idea not to come in last. And although it is not an elimination, it's still important to, do well in this challenge. And I can't say who's going to win or who's going to lose, but it'll be interesting to see what happens. And with that, that is the end of the episode. Thank you all so much for listening. It's going to be interesting to see if the alliance of Kai, Patrick, and Dan will make it to the top 3. It'll be interesting to see if Gary and Jeff will make it to the top 3. It'll be interesting to see if Fernando makes it to the top 3. It'll be interesting to say the least. But unfortunately, next episode, there doesn't seem to be an elimination because spoilers for episode 10, based on the episode summary, 3 people are going home in a challenge on episode 10, and then the final 3 will battle it out to see who will be the last one standing, which means 5 people are going to be eliminated in one episode, and that's crazy. I'm not going to make any assumptions because I'm usually wrong, but I have my favorites, and I hope they win. And also support your favorite survivalist. Please do not send hate to the survivalist. Don't believe everything the survivalist says. Don't disbelieve everything the survivalist says. Just take it with a grain of salt. See how they react online and don't be mean, because there is a lot of animosity going on because people are believing what one person is saying when that one person might not know everything or everyone knows nothing. But just be nice, please. And thank you all so much for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Please like, comment nice things, and subscribe. And click the next video if it's mine. Okay, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day/night. Bye-bye.